like and subscribe. Those who have walked out on first dates. What was your I'm out of here moment? Had a first date with a girl who insisted we go to a really expensive place where she ordered a $25 appetizer, $45 steak and a $15 drink. She wouldn't put down her phone, kept taking calls and answering texts. The waitress noticed and motioned for me from behind her. I excused myself, and the waitress had separate bills all made up, and asked if I wanted to pay my share and leave her at the table. I said, that would be wonderful. So I did. That waitress is one of the real ones. Probably sees stuff like that happen all the time. This guy and I were eating dinner, after chatting for a couple of weeks, and unprompted, in the middle of something I was saying, and completely unrelated to what was being discussed, he said something along the lines of, so you know in order for this to work you're gonna have to share yourself, right? My friends and I like to pass girls around. I was pretty dumbfounded, and after a bit of stuttering I told him I didn't think it was going to work, asked for a to-go box and my portion of the check, and nope the out there. He invited me and a friend to play dodgeball with a group of folks I have never met. We're having an okay time. He's paying more attention to his friends, but that's fine, because I have got my friend to keep me occupied. We're hanging out in the parking lot before the first game is about to start when out of nowhere he grabs a ball and throws it at my crotch as hard as he can. This mother screams wham, bam, right in the clam. I immediately turn to my friend and ask her if she's ready to leave. I say goodbye to him and his friends. Immediately come home to a grip of texts about how immature I was behaving. You went on a date with Peter Griffin? Went to meet a guy for the first time at his house. There was a pile of toenail clippings on his coffee table. And it was not one recent clipping. It was like many clippings. Out the door I went. How rude of you to refuse your dowry. Went first for a walk. He did not shut up for a minute for 1 hour. Complains about everything and everyone in his life. Not even ask, nor allow me to give a comment. Sat down, he orders food for me, without even asking, gets his drink, bartender mentions the caps are difficult to open, but he arrogantly and rudely brushes him off, tries to open them himself, but ends up spilling juice all over himself. Yells like it was the staff's fault, and how the country he is from is superior. No regard for people, just yelling. At that point, I wanted to get under the table, because that was actually a restaurant I frequently visit, from a small town with just a handful of restaurants. Continues to talk about how superior, and above all that incompetence he is, and when he becomes manager, he would fire people like that. Continues with complaints for another hour. I offer to split the check considering that he talked about money issues, and because I obviously did not want to see him ever again, so did not want to feel like I owe him anything. He yells at me, I leave the money on the table, walk off. He basically continues yelling at stuff for going after check again with the in my country, talk about how they have it on the spot. Grabs my hand, and says angrily to wait for him. Ask me literally 2 questions finally, I say I will grab a taxi, but he forcefully insists to walk me home. To avoid him making another scene, I accept. We walk in silence, I try to have him off and leave, he insists to follow me home, how there are probably some dangerous people around. He tried to force himself on me on my front door, the one of the yard fence or how it is called, even though I said I don't think it will work. Exact words, you owe it to me. We went on a date, I did not waste my money for nothing. I literally pushed him off, he was skinnier, and threw another $20, besides the ones I already left for my meal in the restaurant, at his face, saying here, we are done. Got instantly in the yard, locked the fence, while hearing him yell, and sent him a text, that I will call the police, if he does not get the out of there. He left. The worst part is, his aunt was our neighbor, my mom knew his mom, and were good friends, and the next day, on my way out she literally had the audacity to ask how did it all went. I'm pretty sure she heard him screaming awful things since literally, their house is like 10 meters from mine, across the street, literally, and I told her just you should have raised him better. They never spoke to me again. I'm absolutely fine with that. Edit, asterisk 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 to everyone asking about his country. I have replied to some, but still to answer. He was from Serbia, and I do not hold it against Serbian people. Quite the opposite, nor do I think that was SMH related to his country or their mentality, but his own personal shortcomings and insecurities. And he was probably trying to, I don't know, impress me or show off, or boost his ego. Probably all of that. There are Thai assholes like that probably everywhere, so it is not that. Even though yeah, Balkan countries, in general, still have more patriarchal toxic masculinity, macho man syndrome issues compared to some more developed European countries. Their Serbian mentality / standard culture is similar a lot to ours. Macedonia, because not so long ago, like literally when my grandparents were young, these countries lived in Yugoslavia community, and our mindset / culture / development may not be the same, but it is pretty similar, and we share a lot of similarities in culture, so I do not think it was that much of a cultural difference or wildness, rather projecting and lashing out, to compensate for personal insecurities. On a first date with a military guy. He spent a large portion of the date talking about why the strippers in Toronto were better than the strippers where we lived. To change the topic, I asked him if he did any volunteer work with the military overseas, and he said no. I joined the military to kill people, not help people. I got my bill, chugged my beer, and left as fast as I could. Not me, but this happened to a friend. Context: friend has a beard. So my friend picks up this girl and Thea on their way to dinner, and she says, you do realize that, if this is gonna work, you have to shave that off, right? He did not say anything, just turned around, and dropped her back off at her house. The fact that within 10 minutes of meeting him, he started making sexual comments, and joking about following me home, so he could stalk me, if I rejected him. I got out with the help of a bartender who let me leave out the back door. Shout out to bartenders everywhere who do this sort of thing. This is meeting someone from an online dating app. He turned up with pupils the size of dinner plates, and super erratic. He said he'd forgotten his wallet, so I got the first round. We were on the way to the second pub to meet his mates, so they could lend him some money. For the walk there he spoke absolute garbage / nonsense non-stop, but ended with how he tried to drown his ex's chihuahuas in a pool. Near the pub he said he had to answer whoever was calling him on the phone. At this point we were 30 minutes into the date and already going to the next pub. He'd downed his drink in about 3 seconds. Whilst he stood there on the phone I said I would meet him at the pub. Everything was all in close proximity, but instead walked past it and ran all the way home. Completely unrelated, but the pupils like dinner plates reminded me of a weird night I had when I was working in Street Louis one time. I had finished work for the day and had went out to a random bar near our hotel. I am from Detroit, so no idea what the place was like. While I was sitting at the bar, chatting with the bartender and bouncer, some random drunk guy came in with friends and yelled, "Hey, I need to buy this guy a shot." He walked closer to me and followed it up with, "Oh, I thought you were somebody else." Still got the shot though. Half an hour later a 6 inches, jacked drug dealer walked in and hugged me from behind, lifting me out of my chair saying, "You want a shot?" I turned around and he said, "Oh, I thought you were somebody else." Still got the shot. About 20 minutes later one of the drug dealer's companions was fishing her hand around my crotch, so I picked it up and removed it asking, "Can I help you find something?" She turned to me with dinner plates for pupils and said, "Oh, I thought you were somebody else." I never found out who that somebody else was, but he seemed to be living a fun life. 1 p.m. lunch date, and she was drunk as a skunk. She invited me back to her place, where she said her 2-year-old son wouldn't even notice. I noped out, and called her a cab home. I still feel bad for the son years later. She finally let it slip that she had a BF lol, but it was totally fine. BC things had been going bad for a long time, and she was going to break up with him. My thoughts were that, if she would do that to him, she'd do it to me. No thanks. Was told by an elderly gentleman, once you lose them how you found them. Went to pick up my blind date. She opened the door and looked at me. I looked at her and said yeah, I agree, and turned on my heel and left. Total date time less than 5 minutes. Invited me to a bar, which was apparently close to his apt, and kept wanting to snuggle at his apt with me. I left to a friend's party and met the man I've been with for 3+ years. The first guy later texted me a pic on Easter Sunday. Did it come with the caption, "He has risen"? Still gross, hope you reported him. Great chats online, decided to meet in person. He's got a Bluetooth headset with a little LED light that shows it's on. He keeps it on during drinks. I work up the nerve to ask if he can take off the headset while we are eating dinner. With pride and complete confidence he says, "Don't worry. You totally have my full attention. This isn't a phone headset, it's a camera." She brought her pet rat with her that was hanging out in her bra, feeding it French fries. She casually mentioned she had warrants, so I just faked an emergency and bailed. He started making comments about my percent, took me to his house to use the bathroom before the next part of our date. We had lunch first, then were supposed to play mini golf. Did not know he lived with his parents, so I had to meet them on the first date. They were nice, but I felt so uncomfortable because I already knew this was not going to move beyond date #1 thanks to his puss remarks. He told me to wait in his room while he went to the bathroom, and I noticed that his computer was on. Before our date he was chatting with a friend, and he left it up on the screen. The last message he had sent said, "I hope I get to see internet_posser's tits, I bet they're so perky and small." Well, leave that up and send me in there to see it. I lied saying that my mom called with an emergency and needed me back home. Nope. Out and never spoke to him again. When I realized she was trying to get her ex get jealous of me, she chose the place and time, and it was where her ex worked at that time. Left and apologized to the ex. Later she texted me saying that she'd forgive me for the faux pas if went to another date she still picked the same time and place. I ghosted her. I had to pick him up, and he complained about everything. My car, the way I drove, my music taste, why was I being so quiet while carefully plotting my escape plan. Definitely the moment he said, "My friends really want to meet you. I need them to know you're real." And fatter as when I bounced. I had invited a guy off a dating site to my house. When I opened the door, he said he could kill me if he wanted, and to never meet anyone off the internet again. My 2 male roommates were in the kitchen because they knew this guy was coming and heard him. They ran him out of the house PDQ. He was 45 minutes late picking me up. Weather was quite poor, so I gave him a pass. Get to the coffee shop, take off my jacket, and immediately he says, "I see you brought your A game, or should I say, D game," referring to my breasts. I am surprisingly busty for my frame. Even the people to tables over just stopped and looked at him. Guy wanted to meet a place I used to work at. I showed up, and he was already there. I order vodka and we're glaring into the menu while his shots arrive, and he's just pounding them. Base bartender is giving the stinky. I know him, so I'm like, WTF. The date steps out for the bathroom or vape, and the bartender beelines to my table to warn me this guy is a raging alcoholic that ed around with his cousin a few months back. I noped right out of there. We chatted online. At the time I was a smoker and told him. He said no big deal, because he smokes too. Decided to meet up at Starbucks for coffee. First thing he said, "Hi. By the way, when I said I smoke, I was talking about meth." I said, "Oh, bye." And turned around and left. Blind date, she took her to a fetish party, asked me if I wanted to pee on a guy with her, told her no thanks, eyelines used the urinal this time and split. Asked me if I wanted to pee on a guy with her. Classic rookie mistake, you wait until 3rd date at least to ask to pee on someone. I had a first date with a girl who told me, actually I'm engaged, but I'm not 100% sure if he's the right one. So I'm going to go out on a few dates to see if I change my mind. Check please. Having the usual get to know you conversation over drinks. I was telling how my car was stolen the night before, and her response was, "Don't you just hate blacks?" I never said who stole it. I was out of there. She had 22 cats, and would just randomly take in strays. Not give them any vet care, and was planning on keeping a recent litter. I love cats. I paid the bartender when she went to the bathroom and hyper-walked to the door. Forwarded her contact info and a summary of what she told me to the Humane Society. Invited me inside while he finished getting ready, no biggie. Once inside he insisted that I'll let him show me his dungeon. Dude's apartment was pretty empty, minus a TV and couch, but his bedroom was kitted out. He then wanted now uncomfortable me to see if the shackles on his bed fit me. Thankfully, I had set up for a friend to call me within the first 30 minutes of the date and I faked an emergency. She just wouldn't stop talking about rape in the sushi restaurant. With all my power I tried to veer the subject somewhere else, until she called me a rapist just right there with heads turning at me. At that point I was done, paid the tab, and got the hell out mid-meal. IDKY, but you specifying that she was doing this at a sushi restaurant in particular made me laugh. Where the fish is raw, and so are the conversation topics apparently. Hadn't even met the guy yet, we were still chatting online to set up the first date. We were going to be busy at different times that weekend, but I was interested, and sincerely offered to meet a week later instead. He proceeded to get drunk by himself, and sent a ton of sad messages about how he couldn't get a date, and he was unattractive, and I was totally gonna bail on him. Which wasn't the plan before, but it certainly was now. I have a few. 1. He told me I was not pretty enough to be so confident. Like what? I was shocked, but the server came to my rescue, and was like, "Girl, get out to here, no charge for your drink." 2. He told me that people looking at his sleeve tat without permission was the equivalent of women being raped for wearing skirts. 3. I sat down across from him, and within 5 minutes of meeting me, he tried to slide his hand up my dress under the table. Yikes. 4. He told me he had too many back issues of The Economist to read, so he could not read anything I might suggest ever. 5. He told me his fiancée of 9 years had dumped him the week before. We were back at her place. She pulled out a giant glass jar that was full of what I thought was moonshine. She proceeded to explain to me that it has 100% GHB, and that her kink is to be drugged with it before sex. She went into the bathroom, and I got the hell out of there so fast that my imprint on the couch probably was not gone by the time I was driving. He was a friend of a friend. He went to a restaurant and ordered our food. While we waited he started to say things like, "First I'll eat this meal, then I'll eat you out." I laughed cause I thought he was just joking. I thought he was just nervous and his mouth lost his filter. Then when the waitress later asked if we want more to drink he was like, "Yes, bring us something strong." I said not for me, and that I have to drive later and just want a Coke, and he looked at me and was like, "Don't be stupid. You think I'll you once and let you leave? Yeah, I'll at least stay the night." The waitress looked at me with wide eyes like I'm crazy for even being there. After she left I told him that he has to stop with this, that it was rude and that when we were on our first date, he apologized and for 10 minutes it was okay. Then, as if a switch was turned on, he said just like that, mid-sentence without even ending his previous story, "You know what, I cannot control myself anymore. Either we go now or I'll you on this table." I told him I'll go to the bathroom. He complained like a baby that we have to go now. I went anyway, and went to the waitress, paid for the food, and left without a word. She wouldn't stop making fun of me. She was 26, and I was 36, though if it matters, we were at the same place in our careers/income, and she kept making ageist jokes about how I was old and decrepit. Eventually, after telling her pretty directly to lay off, I just said, you know, I'm not enjoying this, I'm going to go, and paid for the table and left. Later she said it was because she was overcompensating, because she was self-conscious about how much younger she was, but that just means that when she's uncomfortable she goes straight to demeaning the other person. She looked over my shoulder and said, oh, my other date is here. It seemed to be going alright for a while. We meet late afternoon, and went for a stroll around town doing a little bit of a pub crawl with a drink at each, followed by some food at a monthly food truck festival I knew about, which was going to be followed by a local bar and dancing. I kept seeing the same guy, all the locations obviously following us. On a toilet break I mentioned something to one of the pub doormen, who asked him to leave politely, although that got a little heated. She ran over to the doorman and explained that it was her husband. They had a thing of watching each other go out with someone, and maybe watching them have sex. I did drop in a question, if they had ever done more, like stealing from someone, and she accidentally said it had happened, but only a couple of times, before trying to say that she didn't mean that. I left them with the doorman, and reported them to the police. I drove us. Started to parallel park. Been working/parking in SF for years by then, and he said, I'll park this for you. Women don't do well at parallel parking. At dinner he was dismissive only to female wait staff. I ran into these two hilariously drunk surfer dudes on my way from the bathroom. They told me my date was a jerk. We laughed about it, and I went back to my table. When leaving, the drunk dudes were also outside. I said bye to them, and a Charlio had the nerve to bark, shares with me. I told him to wait while I got in the car and unlocked the doors. Except I didn't. I drove off and left him standing there. The two drunk dudes whooped and yelled, go, lady, go. Such an awesome finish to a terribly embarrassing date. When he asked me to change my clothes because they were not sexy enough, and told me what I had to order for Ordo vertical bar, he ended the date by talking about his gun all dirty or no vertical bar. Only happened once. She kept talking about her ex. I asked if she wanted to get back with him. She said I don't know, and showed me a picture of him. Couldn't leave fast enough. Blind date set up by my grandparents. I love my granddad and he has done so much for me, so I went. We met at a bar where my best friend worked. We get drinks and I'm talking to my friend. He says, this homo trying to hook up with you? 1. Hella's not gay. 2. It wouldn't matter if he was 3. He was just checking in on me. So I am already done with him at this point, but my ride is still over an hour away. His mate shows up at one point and starts trying to flirt with me. It was gross. My date then starts asking about my hot friends, and if I can get them to come out. I said I like my friend so vertical bar. No, he starts being racist against Pacific Islanders, and was horribly rude to this German guy they're drinking. When my ride gets there I said I am leaving. He said I've got a big. You should come home with me. I said thanks, but I'd rather gouge out my eyes. The next day he messaged me and said, you probably think I am a bit of a C***T after last night, but do you want to go out again? I had no intentions of ever seeing him again, so I explained why his behavior was unacceptable and suggested he try making friends who are girls, so he sees them as something other than a hole to stick his in. I told my grandparents everything. They told his parents, and apparently his dad was super embarrassed. My grandparents were then informed to stay out of my love life, and anytime they brought it up I just say I've got a big. You should come home with me. He did a racist impression of his Asian professor while we were having dinner in a Vietnamese restaurant. He picked me up and drove though, so I didn't leave on the spot. When we got in his car after dinner he asked if I wanted to go back to his place. I made up an excuse as to why I couldn't. He made calls on Bluetooth to hang out with other people while I was still in the car. It wasn't even while driving back, the car was still in park. You've been visited by the ghost of a very important man. Pay your respects by liking and subscribing, and he'll grant you 3 weeks of good luck. 3 weeks of